So, sorry. Delighted to be here, and thank you, Mo and Denina, and the Chamber of Commerce for inviting me over. And I hope that this is a beginning of a new cooperation, a new friendship that we really moving forward. First, I think I want to thank you for all of you've been doing for the last 2 years for Israel. I know that the community here was very supportive since October 7th, and it's much appreciated. And I think I'll tie a little bit later on to what Iron Nation has been doing and how it ties in all together. I don't know if you introduced me, but I'll say a few words about myself, and then I want to dive a little deeper. So, Gil Friedlander. I live in Israel, married, 3 children. 2 of them, the older ones, are in the army. I was born in Canada, in Toronto. I moved as a child to Jerusalem, and I was back and forth between Jerusalem and Toronto. I'm always impressed when I talk with Mexican Jews that they speak Hebrew much better than anyone in Canada and the US that goes to Jewish schools they can speak, so it's impressive. I served in the Air Force in Israel, in flying fighter planes, 10 years full-time, 10 years reserves. Once I graduated, I did an engineering degree in Tel Aviv University, an MBA in McGill in Montreal in Canada, did some strategic consulting work in North America. Back to Israel, I've been almost 30 years in the high-tech sector. The last 18, I was entrepreneur, co-founder, CEO of several companies. Was fortunate along the way to exit, sell a few companies. In recent years, I've been spending more of my time around taking technology, mainly from the academia in Israel, around climate tech. And when October 7 occurred, my partner that we've been working together for many years came with this idea. We understood very fast that great Israeli startups, as good as they are, may not survive because many financial investors pulled away from Israel. European, Asian, from the Gulf region, some American. And in startups, if you cannot make the next round of funding, it doesn't matter how good you are, you will not survive. And we decided to put together a fund, which is called Iron Nation, and I will describe it more in detail. The goal of it was to support great Israeli startups that were impacted by the war. So sometimes they had investment term sheets that were withdrawn. Maybe rightfully, finance doesn't like to invest in war zones, but I think there was much more than that. Some of these investors had some anti-Israel sentiment, maybe anti-Semitism. And some of these companies had their teams enlisted for Miluim, initially in Gaza and then Lebanon for a long time. Some of these startups had their operations impacted, hit by the war directly. So we put together a fund called Iron Nation with a goal to support these companies. Instead of, we replaced some of the money with money that I would say is supportive to Israel. I would even say is Zionistic money. We have done this as volunteers. So the 3 of us, the 3 partners that started Iron Nation, we personally benefited from the tech ecosystem in Israel. We had exits, and we felt that this is our time of giving back. So we did it pro bono. In Fund 1, we didn't take any management fee or carry. We were very successful of bringing almost the entire venture capital community in Israel around this initiative. 48 venture capital firms joined this, both in Israel and in the US. General partners and principals, everyone done it pro bono. Some have been sitting on our investment committee. Some supported us with deal selection and due diligence. We set a goal to raise $20 million very fast. fast we reached that goal. The Israeli government, through the Israeli Innovation Authority, provided us non-dilutive funding, so it almost doubled to $40 million. And within a year, we invested in 24 great Israeli startups. Many of them would not survive, would fold, not because they're not good, just because of the situation. We're very proud that in the $20 million that we brought in these rounds, $143 million were invested. And if I'm looking at Fund 1 in perspective here, so some very interesting things happened. Ira Nation was the most active fund in Israel in 2024, which is quite amazing for a fund that did not exist, only started at the end of 2023. The reason, I think we're one of the only funds that all our backers are supporters of Israel, and I would even say Zionistic. Other funds, there's great funds in Israel, but once there's a war, Japanese investors don't like to address capital call into the fund. Our investors told us to double down, and we turned to be the most active investors with 24 investments. That was made by over 1,000 companies that applied for Ira Nation for funding. And I think it shows, on one hand, the challenge of early startups facing with fundraising in Israel, and the other side, if we had to make 24 decisions out of 1,000, less than 2.5%, it really shows that we invested in best-in-category companies. We had 77 investors that came to support us. These are from all over the world. We have from Europe, we have from Australia, US and Canada are very strong investors. We have from Brazil. Unfortunately, we don't have from Mexico yet. And one of the reasons I'm here this week is I want to tell the story of Ira Nation and gain interest of the Jewish Mexican community, maybe the non-Jewish Mexican community as well, of the mission that we have and the investment opportunity. I would say if you look at it in the perspective of a year and a half later, Ira Nation was a great success. We leveraged the sense of unity that we had in Israel, that everyone came together voluntarily to support these great companies. And I will dive later on to some of these companies and the early success that we see with it. But before that, I want to kind of take a step forward, backwards, and talk a little bit about the economical impact of the last 2 years of the war in Israel. So it's estimated that the direct expenses of the war in Israel in the last 2 years are about $77 billion. That's a huge amount. I don't know if you're aware, but our economical rating was degraded from A+ to A by Fitch and S&P. We had a huge displacement, both in the south and the north. It's estimated that 143 residents had to leave their home, and that had a lot of impact on the job market and local demand. Our tourism was hardly impacted. It's about 60 to 70% lower than pre-war levels, and it's estimated that almost $6 billion were lost by tourism. So even if you don't want to invest in Israel, come and visit Israel. It's important to the economy. So you see on one hand, there's a significant economical impact of the war in Israel. But here's the anomaly that we see here. The macroeconomical indicators actually show a lot of trust of investors in what's happening, and maybe the prospects of moving forward are very promising. So if you look at a few factors, the GDP in Israel actually grew in the last 2 years 13%, which it's almost inconceivable that during a wartime in 7 or 8 fronts with all the economical impact, the GDP is growing. Tel Aviv Stock Exchange with a TA 125, which is our indicator, is at the record high it ever grew. It grew 103% from pre-October 2nd war to these times. which really shows that financial investors believe that Israel is coming out of it, and the prospects are very good. They're very good because I think we have dealt with many of our challenges we have with Hamas and Hezbollah and Syria around us, but there's also prospects of hopefully peace with Saudi and with some other countries which will have a significant impact on Israel. Our currency, the shekel versus the dollar, is 50% stronger than it was before the war. Another interesting factor, and we will talk about it later, the high-tech as a percent of export in Israel actually grew from 53% of the exports to 57%. So on one hand, we're coming out of two difficult years, but if you look at the financial indicators, they're very promising, and I think it ties very well to what we are trying to, the message that we have here these days. I'm not sure if you're aware of the importance of the tech sector for the Israeli economy. Israel, without the tech sector, would not be the country that those of you that visited it is today. 12% of our workforce works in technology, high-tech. 36% of the income tax in Israel is coming from the high-tech. 20% of our GDP. And as I mentioned before, it grew to 57% of our exports. Without the high-tech sector, Israel will not survive. And personally, together with my partners and many people that volunteered, that was the reason that for the last 2 years we put our life on hold and volunteered to support these early stage companies that we were afraid that they will fail, and that will have a significant impact on the entire tech system. With that said, I want to kind of share with you a little bit about the strength of the Israeli tech sector. So Israel is the third hub in the world with startups. The first one is Silicon Valley, the second is New York, and then comes Israel. We have over 9,000 startups for a country that has 10 million people with it. If you take Shanghai and Beijing together, Israel has more startups than these two hubs together. So a very strong concentration of technology and innovation that prevails in Israel. This is an interesting stat. Unicorns are companies that are evaluated at over $1 billion US. If you look at the number of unicorns per capita, per million people, Israel is by far the country with the highest unicorn per capita in the world, 5.2 for every million people. So it really shows the success of the tech ecosystem versus the number of people that are in Israel. But what I wanted to share with you today, with all this success, Israel is facing a significant challenge. I think the ecosystem is very resilient. The founders are very resilient. The main challenge that we have is with funding, that a lot of the funding pulled out and is still not coming back to Israel. So I think you see US investors are coming back, but in the rest of the world, you don't see it, and that creates a huge challenge to the high-tech sector. And this is what Iron Nation is all about, is bringing money from supporters of Israel around the world, Jews and non-Jews, to substitute to some of the money. But this is not philanthropy. We think it's a great investment opportunity. These two graphs show a little bit what happened in the tech sector for funding. So on the left here, you can see CVCs. These are corporate VCs. These are usually investment arms of big companies. And you see how it fell and how many left Israel in recent years. By the way, the challenge started globally. So before the war, in 2021, there was a big high-tech crisis, which Israel was impacted. And then we had the jurisdictional issues within Israel. But we still see many investors moving away. VC fundraising, which if VC doesn't raise money, there's no money to invest in startups, is in a sharp decline. There are sectors that are less affected. Cyber is less affected, but many other sectors, agri-tech, deep tech, are hardly affected because of this decline in funding. So I told you a little bit the story of Ira Nation 1, which was an emergency impact fund that came together 3 days after October 7 and was a great success, investing in 24 companies, bringing together the tech sector together. Together with my partners, we were planning to go back to our day jobs because we've been volunteering for 15 months in this, but as you know, the war in Israel is prolonged much longer than anyone anticipated. The challenge continues to grow with funding in Israel, and we were very successful of harnessing funds that are supportive to Israel, substituting part of the financial money that moved out. Just maybe to talk a little bit who came aboard. So we had high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth individuals from all over the world that invested in Ira Nation. We had Jewish foundations that supported us. We had Jewish communities, mainly in the US. This is very interesting. In North America, Jewish communities are managing $90 billion. It's a huge amount. They're doing an amazing job, I think similar to what you're doing in Mexico with supporting Israel with philanthropy. But once it comes to their endowment, they're investing in the US, but they're not investing their endowment in Israel. Following October 7th and the Ira Nation initiative, we were successful of making a change. And we started with communities like San Diego, that was the first one to invest out of their endowment in Ira Nation, and then Colorado, and New Jersey, and New York. So we managed to bring money that never came and invested in Israel before into the tech sector through Ira Nation. And this success was something that is important for us, but many people in the tech sector in Israel understand how important it is to bring some new sources of capital to Israel that never invested before in the Israeli economy or in the Israeli tech sector. We decided about 6 or 8 months ago to continue with the second fund, which was not our original plan, and that's the investment opportunity I want to share with you today, because Fund 1 is already closed and fully deployed. Ira Nation 2 is a larger fund. It's a $100 million fund. I'm happy to share with you that a third of it is already committed, and we started investing. And I'll tell you a little bit about the Ira Nation 2 investment opportunity. We have the same DNA that we started in October 7th. So we're all about Israel. We're investing only in Israeli or Israeli-related startups, and with the goal of really securing Israel's position as the startup nation moving forward. We are continuing to leverage the collaboration that we had in Israel following October 7th, the sense of unity, and we're working very closely with other VCs in Israel and the US that invest in Israel side by side. But I want to emphasize, this is not philanthropy. This is investment opportunity with ROI. I've done quite a lot of legwork in the US and Canada, and I've met a lot of Jewish communities, and I saw some donor fatigue. They donated to so many causes that are related to Israel in the last 2 years that they were a bit tired from this. And I usually say, Ira Nation is not about philanthropy, it's not about donation, it's another pocket. It's your for-profit pocket. But I think it's a great example where you can do good and do well, combining both of these together. So to summarize, Ira Nation is really about further fortifying Israel tech sector while delivering exceptional returns to our investors. I strongly believe that this is the time now to invest in Israel. And by the way, not only in Ira Nation, I think venture capitals that invest in Israel in this vintage would be very, very successful. There is still a perceived macro risk that discourages a lot of foreign investors. So not a lot of foreign money is reaching Israel. but the talent and the innovation is definitely still in Israel and flourishing. We see a lot of companies that have proven technological assets, but the valuations of these companies are very attractive, pretty low, because there's not enough funding in Israel. So the basic laws of the economy want to buy low and sell high, and definitely now it's a time to invest or buy low. And there's still very strong government support, which is non-dilutive, so whoever invests now in Israel can enjoy non-dilutive money that the government provides. And we strongly believe that investors who stand up now will capitalize on this investment opportunity. This is a slide that we've done some research, and I want to share with you because it's interesting. Unfortunately, in Israel, we had many conflicts throughout these last decades. And we looked at previous conflicts, at companies that managed while all the difficulties of these conflicts, of the Intifada and Lebanon War, to raise money. And we found out that some of the most successful companies in Israel, the unicorns today, are actually companies that managed to raise funds during these conflicts. And we think it's not by chance. We think that founders, CEOs, that are able, during a wartime... All fine? Is there a safe room here? Because I'm from Israel. So founders that managed in a conflict, in a wartime, to raise money, it shows a lot about the team, the entrepreneurs, the CEOs. And we believe that many of the companies that we invested now, in a few years, we'll have another column here, and you will see that these are some of the best companies that are coming out of Israel. So this correlation is something that is very interesting, and we strongly believe in the resilience of these founders moving forward. I'm not going to dive deep into this now, but as I said, we are leveraging loans that the Israel Innovation Authority, the government is providing us. This is non-dilutive, and it really provides a lot of values both to the companies and reduces dilution to the investors. So I want to dive a little now deep into the fund itself. This is the three partners that stood and started Iron Nation, and we did the first fund for 15 months together, pro bono, and continue in Fund 2. My two partners, Chen and Jason, actually were in special forces in a unit called Matkal. So we're all coming from kind of a military background, but also very successful entrepreneurs. But I think what is more interesting is to see the team that is supporting Iron Nation. Our chairman is Ray Fis. Ray Fis is the son of the President of Israel and former Prime Minister Shimon Peres. He, by the way, has a venture capital fund of himself, but he's still our chairman, both in Fund 1 and Fund 2, because he really understands how important is the mission of Iron Nation to the entire venture capital community. We have on our investment committee people like Charlie Fetterman from New York, from the Silverstein family. Yizar Shai, which is was the Minister of Technology and Innovation. He was also a venture capitalist. And he also lost a son October 7th in the war. And we have some of the prime names in Israel that are advising us and supporting us from other funds and export. It's a very long list. I'm not going to share all of it with you, but more people that are behind this initiative and working with us. I want to mention one more name here. A Reverend Christian called Johnny Moore. We understood a few months ago that there's not enough Jews in the world, and we need to extend the support to larger communities, and we started working closely with Christian communities in the US, mainly evangelical, and we found a very, very good bonding there, and we got them both to invest in Iron Nation, but we're also working closely with them, mainly in the Midwest, to bring some of our portfolio companies to open their headquarters in the US. So this partnership that we're building now with Iron Nation with Christian communities, I think is also very important and part of what we're trying to achieve. A couple of words, I don't want to get too technical about our investment strategy, but we're investing out of 3 pools in Iron Nation. The first one is co-investment. So as I told you, 48 venture capital firms worked with us in Fund 1. We have built very good relationship, and we are now often investing with these tier 1 VCs. They're bringing us the deal, and we come as followers. For our investors, it makes a lot of sense, because by investing in a single fund in Israel, Iron Nation 2, they have exposure both to deals that we bring, but top deals that our partners, other VCs in Israel, are bringing. As I told you, we had 24 investments in Fund 1. We decided that in Fund 2, we will invest in the top 25% best performing companies of the fund. So actually, whoever invests in Fund 2 gets the creme de la creme. They get the best companies of Fund 1 that we do follow-up investments. And there's other investments. We built a very good brand in Israel, and we're getting daily a lot of great founders that want us on board, and these are deals that we source. These are some of the other investment firms that we partner with and bring us deal flow, and we invest side by side with them, both Israeli and US firms. A little bit about technicalities. So the fund intentionally is incorporated in Israel. It was important for us. As I said, it's a $100 million fund. We reached first closing and raised over $33 million. The minimum check to invest in Iron Nation is $250,000, but we are committed to our investors not to call more than 25% per year. So if you want to come with a minimum check, it's $62,000 per year. We take standard fees, which is 2% management fee and 20% carry. As general partners, we invest our own money here as well. And the fund lifetime is 10 years, but historical data usually shows that average returns of venture capital start after 3 years and happen between 3 to 7 years. I'm not going to dive too much deep. We're investing in early stage companies. Our initial checks are usually between $1 million and $3.5 million. And we also offer our investors, once we invest from the fund, we offer a sidecar, an SPV. If they want to double down on a specific company, they could co-invest side by side the fund in these specific companies. These are the first 24 companies that we invested in Fund 1. We're very proud of these companies. I can tell you some news, but I can't provide too much. One of these companies, yesterday we got an LOI of one of the largest US companies in the world that provided an offer to acquire one of these companies. It's under NDA, so hopefully in a few weeks we can say, but that's probably the first company that is going to be acquired here, which is relatively fast, within a year and a half. There's kind of 3 verticals that we invested. So software, enterprise SaaS, life science, health and medical. Out of the 9,000 startups in Israel, about 3,000 are in life science. So there's a very good pool. And by the way, there's very challenging to fundraise for medical companies, so you can get access to very attractive valuations. And then we have deep tech and defense tech, which following the war is really booming in Israel. I maybe want to mention 2 or 3 companies here that are interesting. This company here, Rami Medical, was our first investment in Iron Nation 1. This is a company that developed a patch for brain surgery. Once you do a brain surgery, you need to cut through a dura-layer, and usually after the surgery you need to amend it. You take a graft from your body, The graph has a lot of challenges, it leaks, and so on. They developed a nanomaterial that it's like a plaster. Instead of that, they use a plaster. It took them 8 years to develop this and receive FDA. So they got an FDA approval in the US. They had an investment that following October 7th, the investor, a European investor, pulled out and said, sorry, I'm not investing now in Israel. The company was about to fold after 80 years, FDA. We looked at the company together with VCs that helped us look at it, and we decided to invest. Since we invested, they had a very successful 24 and 25 year. They're now deployed in 18 medical centers in the US where key surgeons, key opinion leaders are using their patch. What I'm sharing with you now is not public information, but I'm sharing it in this room. A few months ago, Johnson & Johnson came, looked at this company, decided to distribute their product worldwide, open a clean room, a manufacturing facility in the north of Israel, in Haifa, invest in their next round of funding, which we came as well in, and once they receive FDA on their second product, Johnson & Johnson has an option to acquire the company at 16 times the valuation that we came in. Now this has happened in less than a year and a half. We also are very proud of this company, and I don't know if you hear these stories too much here in Mexico. This company is led by an Arab Christian female founder. The company is in Haifa, in the north of Israel. It has Jews, Christian, Muslim, Druze, all working together, developing this solution that is really healing the world. And I think on the media here, you don't understand how much there's still a lot of coexistence in Israel. And this is a great example. And for us, it manifestates what we believe of kind of doing good and doing well. So it's a great investment opportunity, but it's also a very good company that we feel good about. I want to mention maybe another company, because I had some discussion and I understand there's some interest here around agri-tech. Green Eye is a company, very similar story. They had an investment round by a Belgian investor. 3 days after the war, the October 7th, they got a bit of a cynical email that you're too busy now with the war and we will come in once the war is over. The company was about to fold. We decided to invest. We had the current investors come in. They lost a $6 million round, and after we decided to invest, they actually managed to build an $8.6 million round, a larger round. Green Eye developed a solution for precision herbicide spray. So when you spray a field with herbicides, with chemicals, they put cameras with AI on the tractor, on the herbicide, and they detect where there's weed. So instead of spraying the entire field with herbicides, they spray only the weed. It saves 90% of the chemicals for the farmer, so very fast return on investment to the farmer. It doesn't poison and contaminate the land. And again, this company last year grew 500%. Mainly they're selling to big soya and corn and cotton fields in the Midwest of the US. But they're now expanding to Argentina and to Australia and maybe Mexico in the near future. And the last company that I want to discuss here today is Airways. So we did not invite this October 7th war, but the level of innovation that came from 2 years of conflict is unprecedented. And I think there's two sandboxes in the world where technology came to play in the war. It's Ukraine and Israel. And many people came from the war with great ideas and understanding of real need, and the defense technology is really booming. Airways is a company that came from by 3 Air Force guys. They're doing unmanned traffic management. So they're managing the airspace between 0 and 400 feet for drones. So you have air control in higher levels, but in lower levels there's a lot of drones and it usually needs to be automatic. So they have a solution for managing the airspace. And they started deploying it in ports, like in Rotterdam, in Europe, and in Hamburg, managing the entire airspace there of all the drone activity. And then, when October 7 occurred and the war in Gaza started, we understood very fast that we're shooting down our own drones. We didn't know who is a Hamas drone and who's our own drone. And the IDF came to Airways and said, we need urgently a solution. And in the first days of the war, they deployed the system, exact same system that is deployed in civil solution, in a military solution. And they managed the entire airspace in Gaza and then in Lebanon, tens of thousands of drones. And it was very, very successful. And that's a great example of a dual-use company that is selling both to civil customers, but as well to military. This company now is penetrating the US. So next year we're going to have the Mondial. In the US, they're using them now to manage the airspace of the soccer fields where the Mondial is going to be played. And they are actually doing like command and control. So they're integrating all the radars around the field and all the anti-drone shooting down and electromagnetic solutions to divert drones. But they're the command and control level. And if there's like the vice president of the US, they know exactly where he sits and how to build the solution. We're not in the Mexican market as well, but you're going to have games here as well, and I think this could be very applicable. So these are examples of companies that came out of the war and providing some amazing solutions here. Let's skip this. This talks maybe in one moment about, I always call this our unfair advantage. So our investors, most of them are very successful business people, but they also care about Israel. So further than investing in Iron Nation, they support our portfolio companies. And that provides a huge leap to our portfolio companies. And we have so many stories where our investors helped our company to reach an account or to the market or provided them advice based on their experience. So we are enjoying both the financial power, but as well the strategic power that our investors are bringing to our portfolio companies. So I want to kind of summarize. Iron Nation is very value-driven. We started as a pro bono, supporting Israel in challenging times, and we keep this DNA. And we have this mission of connecting the Jewish nation around the world to the startup nation. There is a need in Israel. There's still a need in Israel where there's not enough financial funding, and it's hitting a lot of companies. It's creating an amazing opportunity. And I strongly believe that this is probably the best time to invest in Israel. From what I understand, the Mexican Jewish community is more coming from traditional industries, real estate, but I think many of our investors, it's the first time ever that they invested in venture capital, and it's the first time ever that they invested in Israel. So it's a leap that we often see it, but if you have interest, we would be happy to have you and further discuss this. So I really want to thank you for having me here today. This is my email. If you need to contact me, and definitely through the organizers, you can reach me. I'm happy to share the slides. And I want to take some time now for questions about the Israeli economy, the tech sector, or about the Iron Nation. Thank you very much. Who's the brave one for the first question?